Market news now. Asian markets were mixed on Wednesday, but the euro staged a mild recovery on hopes Italy and the European Union can ease a row that has fueled fears of another crisis in the eurozone. While the China-US trade spat simmers, the source of angst among dealers has moved to Rome after the populist government passed a purse-busting budget last week that drew a rebuke from Brussels and warnings to abide by EU rules on public spending. Asian markets slumped at close as the Nikkei dipped 0.7% to 24,110, while the Hang Seng edged down 0.1% to 27,091. The Shanghai Composite Index remains closed for public holiday. The S&P 500 cut losses to end nearly flat on Monday after having been weighed down by concerns about slowing Chinese economic growth due to trade tensions between China and the United States. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.15%, the S&P 500 lost 0.03%, and the Nasdaq Composite dropped 0.67%. Let's find out more about the markets. We cross to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Arabile Gumede is live for us there. Arabile, you're inside the comfort now of the JSE. A little bit earlier on, you were outside in the sun. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, of course, that protest happening a little bit earlier with the coloured community saying that they'd like to form a bigger part of the South African economy and really detailing just their concerns with regards to where they stand as well. They'd like to find out how many people are involved with regards to working at the JSE, shareholdings within the JSE's firms as well, and just the CSI projects of the JSE listed companies, how many of those CSI projects actually impact and are aimed at coloured communities. So indeed, it was a protest that was set forth, and the JSE then receiving the letter and the notes there from the community and clearly saying and indicating that this must be responded to within 7 working days. So we'll continue to see how that comes forward. This Friday is scheduled to be Blood Friday, according to the coloured community as well, saying that the Gauteng shutdown continues in earnest when it comes to Friday, and this time going to the office of David Makura, of course, from the Premier's office. Well, all that and more still continues to happen, and even the markets, though, red perhaps on Friday when you consider Blood Friday from the coloured community, but it's blood on the JSE as well, down around 0.5% today thus far. It hasn't been a good time. September possibly the worst month since June 2013 for South Africa's all-share index as well. A little bit of negativity coming through from Europe, but let's unpack that for you now. Well, you're seeing it there at around 14 Rand 96, but actually, if you take a look at the board behind me, the Rand has officially passed 15 Rand against the US dollar. A few concerns there as the spokesperson for the President, Kusela Diko, notes and states that indeed an announcement regarding the Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene's future will be made out soon. Just when that is, we don't know. Of course, the president a little bit concerned about the state of South Africa's economy and the fragility with which Nhlanhla Nene and his decision to perhaps seek a stepping down may cause with regards to South Africa's market, financial stability as well. He is aimed at and meant to be headed off to the IMF meetings in Indonesia. There is an MTBPS statement that is set to be released later this month, and the investment summit. So October, perhaps the worst month to see off a finance minister in South Africa. But let's unpack all of that now with Chris Gilmore, independent analyst. Chris, that dreaded 15 Rand mark, past that, and clearly with the makers of our own unrest here.
Absolutely, our own idiosyncrasies. And, you know, we've largely avoided that in the past few months since Cyril Ramaphosa has become president. But when you're talking about something as important as the finance ministry, you know, if you're tampering with it in any way, shape or form, it's always taken very seriously, particularly by the likes of the IMF, World Bank, and the ratings agencies. Now, if Nhlanhla Nene were to go, resign, asked to leave, whatever, that would present a real problem. Because as you mentioned in the preamble, he's got the MTBPS coming up. You know, you've got the meeting in Indonesia, and you don't just find finance ministers on the trees. You know, it's not an easy process.
It's a specialized job, that really, right? So at this point, he has to look, if he is to perhaps take Nhlanhla out of office, he has to look inward. That's number one. He needs to look at somebody who's already an MP, perhaps, and make that announcement, or quickly swear somebody in as a member of parliament before he gets there. Your thoughts on who that might be?
There's a number of people. I think one of the people that would come to mind immediately would be Nkubisi Jonas. I mean, he's superbly qualified. He was the deputy during Nene's first tenure there. Impeccable credentials. I mean, he came out years ago and said he was offered a bribe, turned it down at the time with all the ramifications. Whether he wants it or not, I have no idea. He probably doesn't.
Yeah. And the fact that he's not a member of parliament.
Well, exactly.
Factor,
yeah,
right?
that could be problematic. And that part of it is going to be very problematic. To get a ready-made MP off the shelf that can do the job,
running out of options on
there's nobody.
Turning out and just churning them out is what we seem to be trying to do here. But a lot of cyclical work when it comes to rotation. We also had the IMF downgrading South Africa's growth forecast as well not so long ago. We had thought that maybe, you know, because Cyril had, or Nhlanhla was going off to the IMF meetings, that, you know, we'd see a better rand. But that's about to get even worse now, especially if Nhlanhla does go.
That's right. And look, growth is the most important thing. It really, really is. We had the job summit last week. I think President Ramaphosa understands exquisitely just how important this is. Unemployment is the greatest scourge that we face. What is perhaps not apparent to a lot of people, though, is the fact that you can't stimulate this economy either through cutting taxes or cutting interest rates. We're in an interest rate hiking cycle, and as far as taxes are concerned, the government needs every single penny it can possibly get. So neither of those two levers are going to work. So we're going to have to go and look at something a bit more radical. And there are many people out there who've got very, very good ideas, and I think you mentioned it on your show the other day. Harun Barat in Cape Town got some wonderful ideas on this type of thing. It's different. It's actually not that radical. We're talking about more in the realm of niche manufacturing, things that we're already good at, that type of thing. So I think if we can free our minds of this kind of slavish adherence to interest rate cuts or tax cuts to stimulate the economy, you know, there are many, many other options out there that we can actually look at.
Yeah, believing in, I suppose, just orthodox economics and finding our own way to sort of get through the mire situation as well. Let's try and turn our attention to the equity space. And it's very easy to talk about economics now because it really is in the realm. 0.5% down for the JSE All Share. Just downward and downward and downward.
Look, it depends on your definition. But I did the calculation the other day. At this point in time, we're about 13% down, not year to date, but from the peak in January at the height of Ramaphoria to where we are now. And that, by most people's definition, is a correction. Okay? If you look at it in dollar terms and look at the MSCI ETF that is traded in America, we're down about 35%. So in dollar terms, we're down significantly more.
Sure.
That's a bear market in dollar terms. And as we were saying earlier, you know, with the weak rand, given the composition of the oil share should be actually going quite well, but it's not. And one of the reasons, and the main reason it's not doing so well, is the overriding influence of Naspers. Naspers is being dragged down by Tencent. So Tencent in China, China is bearing the brunt of trade wars. There's a lot of regulatory effects that are impacting upon Tencent, and it's impacting on Naspers and therefore on our market. So our market, you know, is very much in the doldrums. It's going sideways to down, and well, staying down in fact. So at this point in time, you think to yourself, well, what is actually going to move this market? And it's not abundantly clear.
Clearly not. MTN is down today 2.33%. They're scheduled to actually meet up with the Central Bank of Nigeria and perhaps discuss situations there, but still going down. 84 Rand a share. It doesn't get any better for them.
I mean, this is back to the levels we had back in 2008, 2009. And I think it just reflects and highlights the difficulty of doing business in a very, very difficult country like Nigeria. You know, they're very much cash-strapped. Although with the oil price having gone up in recent weeks and months, that should certainly be helping them. But, there's no doubt about it. They're obviously trying to extort as much money as they possibly can out of South African and other companies by doing these kind of dodgy suggestions. If history is anything to go by in recent history, when MTN had their most recent altercation with the Nigerians, the Nigerian authorities, they did manage to reduce the size of the fine.
Yes.
But even so, when you've got a $10 billion fine, I mean, even if you halve it, it's going to impact on you very, very severely.
If you halve it, it brings you to where you were the last time in 2015.
Exactly.
So that makes it even worse. Chris Gilmore, appreciate your comments. A lot happening indeed in the market space. Chris Gilmore is an investment analyst there as well. Well, that is where the buck stops for now. A lot happening across the market space. Rand officially above 15 Rand against the US dollar. The JSE All Share firmly down 0.5% as well. A lot really happening across the board. We'll unpack a whole lot more with Nompumelelo and Nzinga right after this. Do stay tuned.